Hello everyone. In continuation with the last class topic that was hemolytic anemia, today we will be seeing about hereditary spherocytosis. Before we jump into the topic, let us discuss a bit about the question I posted in the last video. That was, all are the features of hemolytic anemia except hemoglobinuria, jaundice, increased hepatoglobin and hemosideruria. Among these four options, which of the following is not true in this case? So, hemoglobinuria will be there in a case of hemolytic anemia, jaundice will be present, and as I discussed, whenever there is hemolysis, more of RBC are released, hemoglobin is released that will bind to heptoglobin. So as a result, this level of heptoglobin should be decreased, but it is given here increased. So my right answer will be increased heptoglobin, and the proper answer will be, in this condition there should be decreased heptoglobin. So this was the answer of the question. Now coming to our topic. So today's topic I have planned in such a way that first we will talk about the introduction, then pathogenesis, then the classification and how will you approach such a case, treatment and finally summary. Beginning with the introduction of hereditary spherocytosis. Hereditary spherocytosis is an inherited disorder which is caused by intrinsic defects in the red cell membrane skeleton. So, as the name suggests, hereditary, so this is inherited disorder. Now, in this what will happen? There will be intrinsic abnormality of RBC membrane. So, there is deficiency of some protein, or there is defective arrangement of the protein which leads to this disease. So as a result, what will happen? The red cells are spheroidal, less deformable. As a result, whenever they will pass to the spleen, they will undergo sequestration and destruction. What do I mean by less deformable? Now, in a normal RBC, whenever they undergo minor changes, they can adjust to that changes by changing their shape. But in hereditary spherocytosis, this changing capacity is reduced. As a result, they will be prone to destroyed in the spleen. And whenever there is splenic destruction, there will be hemolysis. So my question is here that there is splenic destruction, means there is too much activation of spleen. So which kind of hemolytic anemia it will be? Yes, if we are correct, this will be a type of which hemolytic anemia? This will be, yes, any guesses? There were two types of hemolytic anemia. One was, here it will be a extravascular hemolysis. Why extravascular? Because the hemolysis is occurring in the spleen. Now next point, they are inherited disorders. So which pattern will be dominant? That is, it will be in the form of autosomal dominant. It means that they will be in autosomal dominant, but few cases will be also in autosomal recessive conditions. Now, it is said that it has been seen that they are highly prevalent in northern European countries, and the ratio is that one person will be suffering out of 5,000. So, the ratio is 1:5,000. Talking about India, it is very common in the northern part of the India. So, again in short, hereditary spherocytosis is an inherited disorder where there is an intrinsic defect in the red cell membrane, and this is mostly as a autosomal dominant pattern. Now a bit about autosomal dominant. In this diagram, I have given an example. Suppose this father is sick and the mother is healthy. So when the product of this marriage will be that 50% will be affected and 50% will be healthy. So this was about autosomal dominant, in which if one allele, if one gene is abnormal, they have the potential to transmit the disease. So that is a characteristic trait of autosomal condition, autosomal dominant condition. Now talking about autosomal recessive, in this both the cases are carrier. A carrier father marries the carrier mother, And as a result, what will happen? If the product we see 25% are healthy, 25% are sick, and 50% are carrier. So this was the result of autosomal recessive. So in H. spherocytosis, most commonly they are autosomal dominant, but few cases can be autosomal recessive. Now talking about what is defect in the red cell membrane. Before that, we should know a bit about normal physiology of red cell membrane skeleton. In this diagram, we are seeing a lipid bilayer. We know that lipid bilayer is composed of phospholipid, cholesterol and glycolipids. This we know. Now what is happening that there is interaction of different type of RBC membrane protein with the lipid bilayer. As in the diagram we can see there is interaction of ankyrin 4.2 protein with the spectrin so that this spectrin can connect with the plasma membrane. So again repeating, lipid is a bilayer. Now RBC has to attach to the membrane. So for this attachment there are few proteins, that is 4.2 protein ankyrin, which will help the interaction of spectrin with the lipid bilayer, that is a specific protein of lipid bilayer, that is band 3. So 4.2 ankyrin helps the interaction of spectrin and band 3. So in RBC, what is happening? In RBC membrane, there is spectrin. This spectrin will have a alpha chain and a beta chain. So this spectrin has to communicate with the lipid membrane. For this, they need two more protein, that is 4.2 and ankyrin. If we compare, all these are perpendicular to the surface. So this is a vertical interaction of the protein. And if there is disruption of any of this protein, or if there is deficiency of any of this protein, the resultant will be spherocytes. Again, what is happening that in RBC there is presence of spectrin. This spectrin will be occurring two form, one is beta form, one is alpha form. This spectrin, when they need to communicate with the plasma membrane, this lipid membrane, they need the interaction of further two protein, that is ankyrin and 4.2. So if there is disruption in this pathway, it will lead to spherocytes. Now if we see again what is happening, in this end we are seeing that the end of the spectrin there is 4.1 protein and actin. Now this actin and 4.1 protein will bind with the glycophorin. So if there is again abnormality of this, again it can lead to hereditary spherocytosis. Now this was about the vertical interaction. What do you mean by vertical? That is perpendicular to the cell surface. So this is the vertical interaction. What is horizontal interaction? If there is any abnormality of spectrin, actin, this is running parallel to the membrane. So anything running parallel to the membrane is your horizontal interaction. If there is abnormality in this interaction, the resultant will be elliptocytosis. So talking in detail, now there is two-dimensional spectrin actin skeleton which is connected to the cell membrane by two interaction. Number one, protein ankyrin and band 4.2, which will help the binding of spectrin to the one transporter known as band 3, which I already discussed. So ankyrin and 4.2 helps binding of spectrin to band 3. Next interaction is your protein 4.1, which binds the tail of spectrin. If we remember, at the tail end of the spectrin there was 4.1. Now this will bind the spectrin to the glycophorin. So these are two interaction. Number one interaction, number two interaction. So defect in any of this pathway can lead to spherocytosis. So different mutations of protein like ankyrin, band 3, spectrin or band 4.2 can result in the defect of the stability of red cell membrane. And talking about the most commonly hated mutation are spectrin or ankyrin, but always remember ankyrin is the most common mutation and the mutation which leads to severity is your spectrin. So most common mutation is ankyrin and the severity depends upon the level of spectrin. So this was about red cell membrane skeleton defects which is leading to your Hayes spherocytosis. Remember, if there is defect in your perpendicular architecture, that is your vertical protein interaction that lead to your spherocytosis. If there is disruption of horizontal interactions that lead to elliptocytosis. So most commonly we have to deal about Hayes spherocytosis. So remember that there is abnormality in a vertical interactions, that is ankyrin 4.2 protein which helps the binding of spectrin to band 3 which is the most common. Now in details that in the last slide we talked about what are the defects that can happen in the RBC membrane. So due to any defect in the red cell membrane, there will be decrease in stability of the membrane. With this decrease in stability of the membrane, in each cycle there will be loss of fragments as vesicles. As a result, there will be decrease in surface area to the volume ratio, and this will lead to decreased deformability of red cells. As a result, whenever they pass through the spleen, since these are abnormal RBC, they will be trapped in the spleen and there will be erythrostasis. That means that RBC will stagnate. With that, there will be decrease in glucose and pH, which will aggravate this process. So there will be more destruction of RBC in the spleen. Since there is destruction of the RBC in the spleen, it leads to extravascular hemolysis due to phagocytosis. Now, as I already discussed, deformability is the capacity of the red cells to adjust to any changes. In normal RBC, if there is any abnormal changes, they can increase their volume so that they can adjust to the changes. But in Hayes spherocytosis, already the volume is increased in respect to area. They cannot adjust more of this and they will be trapped in the spleen, leading to extravascular hemolysis. So whenever there is defect in the protein which anchors the lipid bilayer to the underlying skeleton, there will be secondary metabolic changes which I was talking, like there will be increased sodium potassium flux due to increased activity of sodium potassium ATPase. As a result, what will happen? There will be too much influx of sodium and water always accompany the sodium. This will RBC will be more swollen up and it will lead to lysis. With this, there will be increased glycolysis. As a result, what will happen? There will be decreased 2,3-diphosphoglycerate and there will be decreased pH. Whenever the pH is decreased, the RBCs become more dehydrated and there will be formation of spherocytosis. Now, very important is that always we should remember that in the Hayes spherocytosis, what is happening? There is more activity of sodium potassium ATPase. As a result, what will happen? The more sodium will come inside and water will follow that. There will be swelling of the RBC. Now, at this point, if it was a normal RBC, it could have adjusted to this increased water by increasing its volume. But since this is an abnormal condition and in this stage the volume is already increased, they cannot adjust to these new changes and they will undergo hemolysis due to splenic activity. So here RBCs are dehydrated. Due to dehydration of RBC, there is too much formation of spirochetes. Talking about the clinical features, they can present from any age, starting from the infancy to the older age, but more commonly seen in the younger age groups, and have an equal sex incidence. The family history may be present. Now, what are the common clinical features with which the patient is coming? Anemia is usually mild to moderate depending upon the severity of hemolysis. Whenever there is hemolysis in this, remember that hemolysis is due to what? Because there is abnormal RBC which is trapped in the spleen and the spleen increases its size for the hemolysis. So splenomegaly is a constant feature. Whenever there is hemolysis, there will be liberation of heme. This heme will change into biliverdin, then into bilirubin, which we already discussed. This will lead to jaundice. Apart from that, there will be increased chance of formation of pigment gallstones. Why? Because whenever there is increased bile pigment, they will saturate to form the gallstones. So anemia, splenomegaly, jaundice, and the gallstones. Now, very interesting thing is that most of the time, what we see that the child doesn't come to you with as such the classical complaint of classical features of hydrospherocytosis. They come to you with a routine investigation of anemia and also with a complaint of gallstones. Now, when you take the proper history, you see that we find out that there are more chances of having gallstones. There are multiple gallstones, and when we take the history, we find that there was anemia, splenomegaly, jaundice. We take a family history, then we finally conclude that no, now this case was suffering due to hydrospherocytosis. So there are few crises which is occurring in hydrospherocytosis. Number one is hemolytic crisis. Those due to any stress or an infection, this episodes of hemolysis will be aggravated, and that time the patient will come to you with a complaint of severe anemia. Normally what is happening in this, there is a term called as a compensated hemolytic anemia. That is what, since there is abnormality in your RBC, so whenever that RBC are produced, they undergo destruction. Bone marrow try to produce more of RBC, that is called as increased erythropoiesis. So in this stage, that is compensatory hemolytic anemia, because decreased hemoglobin is compensated by your increased activity of bone marrow. But now if that patient suffered from any infections or any stress, this hemolysis will be aggravated and the patient will come to you with acute clinical features, acute manifestations. That is, there will be severe anemia, massive splenomegaly, severe jaundice. So that time it will be a hemolytic crisis, a term called as aplastic crisis. This aplastic crisis is due to infection by parvovirus B19. Due to infection by this parvovirus B19, there is suppression of erythropoiesis and the patient comes to you with aplastic anemia. Aplastic means suppression of the bone marrow. In this, basically RBC production is suppressed. Now next is your megaloblastic crisis. It is said that since in hemolysis there is increased turnover of erythroid cells, as a result there will be dietary insufficiency of folate, which will lead to megaloblastic crisis. So three crises: hemolytic crisis, aplastic crisis, and megaloblastic crisis. So the patient can come to you with a clinical feature of even megaloblastic anemia. So why? Because they will be in a megaloblastic crisis. Now talking about the classification, they can be classified into mild, moderate, moderate to severe, and severe hATTR depending upon the clinical manifestations. Talking about the mild hATTR, 20 to 30% of the cases are suffering from mild hATTR. There will be usually no anemia, little splenomegaly or jaundice, and the hemoglobin usually tends to be normal. So when the patients come to you with a mild jaundice, then you take a clinical history, then you realize that their parents are suffering from that this disease, then we analyze that no, this is the case of hATTR. Talking about the moderate, 60 to 75% of the cases, now they will suffer from moderate degree of anemia. So hemoglobin now will be reduced to 9 or 10 gram per deciliter. Now increase reticulocyte count. Why? Because there is hemolysis, so there will be increased retic count. Increase serum bilirubin. Why? Because there is jaundice, so the bilirubin level will be increased. And last is there will be mild to moderate splenomegaly, which is a characteristic feature of a hemolytic anemia. Now, next, severe hATTR, 5% of the cases. There will be marked hemolysis, so there will be severe anemia. There will be massive rise of bilirubin level. There will be marked splenomegaly. The gallstones incidence will be increased, and this severe hATTR is usually due to recessive pattern. Now, talking about the approach, how will you approach such a case, such patients? First, clinical feature. Always remember, when we talk about the approach, we have to first talk about the clinical features. All the clinical features we have to see. Then only we will go for the lab manifestations. In hematology, always starting with the complete blood count, we go to the peripheral blood smear, then to bone marrow, then other biochemical parameters, and finally the specific test for specific disease. Now coming to details of the laboratory findings, the anemia usually will be mild to moderate degree. In a peripheral blood smear, we will see presence of microspherocytes, which is the characteristic of hATTR. What do you mean by spherocytes? In the RBC, there is presence of central pallor. But in hATTR, what will happen? There will be loss of this central pallor. There will be no central pallor, and that RBC is termed as spherocytes. And sometimes they can be small, so termed as microspherocytes. Reticulocytes will be present because since there is hemolysis, bone marrow produces more of RBC. They can be released in your peripheral blood smear, and they can be seen as reticulocyte count. So there will be increased reticulocytes. When we go for bone marrow examination, there will be erythroid hyperplasia. Why? Because to compensate the anemia, sometimes when they come to us with aplastic crisis or megaloblastic crisis, we will see the features of aplastic anemia and megaloblastic anemia, which we will study later. Now talking about red cell indices, MCV is usually normal or slightly reduced, but MCHC is increased, that is mean corpuscle hematocrit concentration is increased. Osmotic fragility is increased. Now a bit about osmotic fragility. Before that, this is a slide which is showing spirocytes. This is a peripheral blood smear where we can compare. This is a normal RBC where we can see the central pallor, but in this there is loss of pallor. So this is spirocytes, which are classical in a case of hATTR. But remember, this spirocytes can be also seen in conditions of any autoimmune hemolytic anemia, so that these are present in hATTR, but they are not specific for hATTR. Now talking about osmotic fragility, what happens that whenever we place the RBC in a hypotonic saline solution, the water will come inside the RBC and they will swollen up. In a normal RBC, they can adjust this adjust to this stress by increasing this volume, which I already discussed. But in hiatus spherocytosis, already their volume is increased. So mild accumulation of water can lead to lysis. So in case of hiatus spherocytosis, this osmotic fragility is increased, means that the hemolysis will occur in a lower concentration of sodium chloride. So if we see the graph, now this yellow portion is the normal range. If we compare, if we place the RBC in a decreasing amount of a normal saline, it is said that RBC will start lysing at 0.45% of sodium chloride, and they will complete the lysis once the level is 0.30 or 0.35. But in case of H3 spherocytosis, this cell lysis will occur at a higher concentration of salt. Suppose I said that we are placing the RBC in decreasing amount. So let's talk, we are placing 0.75, 0.6, 0.45. So the lysis can start at 0.65, which is higher than 0.45. So what is the conclusion? That in this, the lysis is occurring at a higher concentration of the salt. Now osmotic fragility is decreased, means they resist this lysis in condition known as sickle cell target cells. That is a characteristic finding of thalassemia. So it can be seen in thalassemia and sickle cell anemia and xerocytes. So osmotic fragility is increased in case of hiatus spherocytosis. Stomatocytes is decreased in case of sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. So this was about osmotic fragility. If we see, we are placing the RBC in a decreasing concentration. Decreasing means first higher to lower level, 0.70, 0.65, 0.60, 0.55, 0.50, 0.45, 0.40, 0.35, 0.30. Now this is the normal case. We see the lysis occurring at 0.45. But if we consider our case of heterospherocytosis, the hemolysis is starting at 0.65%. That is at the higher concentration. Means the osmotic fragility is increased. So by increased osmotic fragility, we means heterospherocytosis. Apart from that, autohemolysis test, what is happening in that, when we incubate the RBC, it is seen that there will be hemolysis, autohemolysis in every RBC. In normal RBC, this autohemolysis is less than 4%, but this will increase in case of hiatus spherocytosis. Why? Because when we keep in incubation, there will be metabolic deprivation. In hiatus spherocytosis, since the RBC are spherocytes, already they are under the metabolic deprivation condition. Now if we incubate those RBC further for 48 hours, this deprivation will increase. They will be deprived of these nutrients, and there will be increased autohemolysis. So after incubation, this stage after incubation, and they show that there is increased spontaneous autohemolysis as compared to the normal red cells, where the autohemolysis is less than 4%. Now next is acetified glycerol lysis test. What we do that, in this we see the time needed for attaining 50% of lysis. Normally, normal RBC take more than 30 minutes to attain the lysis, but in hiatus spherocytosis, this minutes comes to seconds. So they will achieve this lysis at a faster rate. Next, since this is the case of hemolysis anemia, all the parameters which we discuss in hemolytic anemia will be increased, like increased bilirubin level, increased urine urobilinogen, increased methylalbumin, increased LDH, and of course decreased heptoglobin. Why? Because whenever there is lysis, hemolysis, heme try to pair up with heptoglobin. too much production of heme, all heptoglobin are consumed, so the level of heptoglobin will be decreased. Direct comb test is usually negative. What we see that in direct Coombs test, we estimate the presence of antibody or complement that is bound to the red cells in the vivo. Now, in this case, what is happening? There is no immunological reaction. So, there will be no presence of antibody or complement which is binding with the red cells and which is causing the hemolysis. So, the direct Coombs test is usually negative in case of hereditary spherocytosis. In flow cytometry is a test by which we can diagnose a case of hereditary spherocytosis. In this, we use using 5-melenamide compound name. Now next is SDS gel electrophoresis. The full form is your sodium dodecyl sulfate polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. In this, we can see the deficient cytoskeletal protein. Whether it is a deficiency of ankyrin or it is a deficiency of spectrin, we can estimate that by a specific form of electrophoresis that is termed as SDS page. Many books you will undergo the term known as SDS page, that is S stand for sodium dodecyl sulfate, P for polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. This is a test by which we can estimate which type of protein is deficient. This was a diagram which is showing the direct Coombs test. In this, we are taking our red cells and we are testing for the presence of any antibody or complement. If they are present, they will cause the agglutination. If there is agglutination, what do you mean by agglutination? See, these RBCs are separated. Now, this RBC are trying to come together. So, this is showing the presence of agglutination. This agglutination, positive agglutination will say that DCT is positive, direct Coombs test is positive. In this, we will use a specific reagent and this reagent will have a specific antibody. See, now antigen-antibody reaction will occur which will lead to the positive result. But in case of hereditary spherocytosis, there is no such antibody which is causing the damage of RBCs. So, the test will be negative. Now, talking about treatment, there is no as such treatment of this hereditary spherocytosis. We can treat the condition. Now, what is said that spleen is the main culprit which is causing more of hemolysis. So, if we do splenectomy, this process of hemolysis, this anemia will be resolving, but the pathogenesis is not resolved. That protein deficient will be there. And one more complication can happen, that spleen prevents our body from many infections. So if there is no spleen, we need to give them vaccine, basically against H influenza vaccine. So this vaccine we have to give them. Now next is that we already discussed that there can be metabolic megaloblastic crisis, that is due to increased turnover of erythroid cells. There is deficiency of folate. So we can supplement this folate so that their anemia, we can treat the anemia. These are a few modalities of treatment. Nowadays, gene therapy is recent studies on gene therapy is going on, but it is at a very recent level. It is at very naive level. Not so more advanced research are going on for the role of gene therapy in the case of hereditary spherocytosis. But definitely they have shown a positive response, because if we can replace that protein, and as a result there will be improved outcome. So genetic studies are a new branch in the pathology which is giving a challenge for many diseases. Now, talking about the summary, this hereditary spherocytosis presents usually in the childhood. They will present with anemia, jaundice, splenomegaly. In the peripheral blood smear, we will see spherocytes. if we talk about red cell indices, there will be increased MCHC and decreased MCV. One important thing, whenever a case history comes to you, or we see the patients, remember hereditary spherocytosis also is decreased MCV. It's a type of microcytic hypochromic anemia. Now in the microcytic hypochromic anemia, in the most case, whenever there is decreased MCV, MCHC tend to decrease. But since this is hemolysis, there will be increased MCHC. A very differentiating point which will trigger that there is undergoing hemolysis. Because whenever we just see decreased MCV, we think that we are seeing with IDA, that is iron deficiency anemia. But we should always look about MCHC. If the MCHC is increasing, it means that hemolysis is going on, and we should think in the line of hemolytic anemia. Direct antiglobulin test will be negative. Screening test is your osmotic fragility test, and confirmatory test is your electrophoresis. By that we can understand which type of cytoskeleton protein is deficient. This ends to my chapter. Before closing, one question: which of the following is true about hereditary spherocytosis? First, 50% of affected infants have moderately severe jaundice. Diagnosis can be made easily by peripheral blood smear. Intravascular hemolysis is common and mostly inherited as autosomal recessive. Next question: which mutation is not seen in hereditary spherocytosis? Ankyrin, spectrin, band3, and sodium chloride channel protein. This ends to my topic, and thank you everyone. We'll come again with a new topic of hemolytic anemia. Till then, bye-bye.